Today on Locked On Canadiens, we have European hockey and prospect expert Patrik Bexell for the first of a two-parter on prospects and the Olympics.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to episode 543 of Locked On Canadiens. As you can see, we are now on YouTube, but as always, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. My name is Laura Saba. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Scott Matla. And today we have a special guest. Scott, how excited are you for our guest today?
I am extremely excited because we've been saying, hey, we're going to have this guest on repeatedly for the last 3-ish months and
eight.
Yes, we told our listeners, yeah, we're going to have them on. And then we kind of dropped the ball for a little bit. And well, guess what? We finally did it. We finally did what we said we were going to do, folks.
And this guest is actually one of our most requested guests on the show. Our listeners do write in. You can write into us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. And we often get requests for his expertise. His name is Patrik Bexell. You can find him on Twitter at @Zeb_Habs. And you can find his work at Habs Eyes on the Prize. And he's a good friend of both myself and Scott. Patrik, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I haven't moved into my regular office yet. We moved house a couple of months ago. And so I'm hiding in the closet, really, which has nothing to do with hiding in the closet regularly.
It harkens back to the early days of the pandemic where people were creating offices in their closets for like a temporary purpose, and now we've all got one. But I myself am recording from my bedroom right now, and one of our listeners has already shouted out, you need sports stuff in the background, and I'm like, hey, can you see my running medals? That's the closest I'll get to sports memorabilia. But Patrik, I think one thing that people kind of want to hear about right off the top of the bat is, how is Matthias Norlinder doing?
He is back in practice, or Frederik had a COVID outbreak last week, so everyone was only healthy or non-positive. That sounds bad. Non-positive COVID persons were allowed into the training facilities. I'm 99% sure Mattias Norlinder was one of them, but it has been sketchy. Not even journalists like myself or a good friend of Eyes on the Prize, Johan Relander, has been able to get in there and ask questions. Johan has also been on some kind of weird ceremony in New York with some goalie guy. I don't know him, but he's pretty awesome, Henrik Lundqvist, and he deservedly so got his jersey in the rafters. But Matthias is back on the ice in his second game back. He got hit into the glass, and it's very soft glass here as well, so it's not like the National Coliseum when sorry, Scott, now you have to help me. The former Färjestad player. Mattias Nygren. Anyway.
Yes. Where he took a really hard hit along.
Yeah, it was a sort of a similar hit where he bounced off the glass a little bit. From that said, there are no concussion symptoms, and he started playing the second game or the game after. But they took him off after the first game and finished the game with 4 defenders because 2 others went off as well. And after that, he's been out. He has been able. He was supposed to start playing this week, but obviously games has been cancelled. But yeah, they kept him in kept him out of the lineup in the last game because obviously the Olympics coming up and SHL will continue, and former Habs legend Christian Folin will be one of the leaders of the Swedish team.
It is funny to look at some of these rosters, and we'll talk about that in another episode this week. Just the amount of former Habs who are on them. And I know a lot of people have been kind of frustrated with how the season has gone for Mattias Norlinder. He came over. He was there for the preseason. He was injured in the preseason, didn't play for a while, and then got minimally used at the NHL level by Dominique Ducharme and was then injured a little again. went down to Laval for a couple of conditioning games, and then eventually made his way back to Sweden. And I think Patrik and I are kind of in agreement on this, is that I don't see any issue with sending him back to Frölunda to, continue to develop his game. He was not the finished product yet at the NHL level, which is what the team was hoping for. There's no reason to throw him to the Wolves in a season like this right now. And it's unfortunate that he got there and then immediately suffered an injury. And that's not really his fault. It's kind of unfair to see this burden of expectation on him. We see flashes of the skill. I saw them when he was playing in the AHL. He got his first North American goal. But everyone, take a deep breath. He's still young. He's still developing. And he's in good hands. You don't get much better in Europe than Frölunda these days.
It's maybe Sky in St. Petersburg. That would be a good developing club as well. Looking into different aspects of how to develop players. And, well, we all know that Mishka will go 1 or 2 next year. And, well, he's signed until 2025. So whoever picks him second, because that's what I would guess is because of the contract, but they will get a Finnish player much in the same way as Panarin or Tarasenko to a certain degree, but definitely Kirill Kaprizov coming over this year or last year. But yeah, Matthias, I think the main thing was like communication in Frölunda is at such high level. Everyone speaks with everyone. Everyone knows all the plans. Whereas at the NHL level, he felt a little bit outside. Obviously, he stayed in a hotel for almost 3.5 months. And I think that Montreal should probably have spoken to him more about the situation that arose and maybe even sent him back earlier, even with an injury. But obviously, the way the season started, they hoped that he was going to be ready and take maybe that miraculous step forward that they were hoping for. But especially with people losing their places left, right, and center in the defense. On the other hand, it makes no sense to keep playing him in 5 minutes a game or 10 minutes a game in NHL or because he was promised, from my understanding, that he was going to go back if he didn't make the NHL, and then trying to circumvent that from my perspective and from what I hear of other journalists here in Sweden, I think wasn't the smartest way of Montreal to handle that situation.
I think it's kind of emblematic of the dysfunction that existed in the organization that we're hoping now, with new management and hopefully new coaching to come, that's going to change. And hopefully they will kind of solidify his place in his career, because he's one of the players that I think fans at this stage are the most excited about. And I think that he's at least had the sympathy of fans, knowing that there is so much dysfunction going on. There's a lot of things going on. Like, people are they understand that it's not really his fault. And they do know that he hasn't performed to expectations, but he hasn't really been put in the position to succeed to expectations. So it's like everybody kind of agrees that Frölunda is the best place for him right now. And that they're hoping that, this new organization or the new management in the organization will kind of bring him back in a way that puts him in the best position to succeed. But we have so much more to talk to Patrik about today. We have been so excited to have him on that we have 2 episodes with him, and we're going to have the rest of today's episode in just one moment. But first, there might be less football being played, but BetOnline has way more stuff to bet on this playoff season. From score totals, player performance props, to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline is the #1 spot for all things NFL betting in 2022. And with the new year comes a new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today, receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to get started. And it's not just football. BetOnline's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your #1 online wagering destination. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks, as always, for joining us for your first listen of the day. And today's a very special episode. As mentioned, Patrik Bexell is with us, and he and Scott Matla have kind of been discussing behind the scenes what prospects we're going to touch on today. And just to note that Patrik is one of our most requested guests. And this is for TC and BC. Thank you for reminding us. And that actually made us pull the trigger and be like, hey, Patrik, it's time now. And thank you so much for making time for us.
Nah, it's fine. I'm waiting for the NFL to start because we're recording this on a Sunday, right?
The football is dead to me. Last weekend killed any joy I had watching football, and I don't want to relive any of that whatsoever again.
It's a good thing this is a hockey podcast then.
Yes. We continue to record shows when I'm watching crushing defeats of my team in the background where we have to delay it as I sit here and just sweat it out for extended periods of time. To get back to what we were originally on here, we were talking, we talked Mattias Norlinder, who is obviously like the big Habs prospect right now in Europe. But Patrik, someone you've been covering for the last couple seasons now, someone who's kind of slid under the radar because he came from, I believe it was the Danish league, came to the OHL. The OHL season was put on pause. And then he went to Sweden or back to the Danish league and into the second tier of the Swedish league, the Allsvenskan. Frederik Dichow has had an incredible couple years of growth here, and he's established himself as not only a legitimate goaltending prospect, but someone that the Habs fan base should be paying far more attention to, I think, across the board here. And it's a little bit unfair. He isn't in the highest tier of league. He's not playing in Liga. He's not playing in the KHL. He's not playing in the SHL, but he's worth our time and acknowledgement for just the season that he's having. And there's allegedly big news at the end of his year. Can you tell us a little bit about, what you've seen from the Gnome this season? You've seen him in person, and it's opened my eyes as someone who kind of didn't pay much attention to him in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, first, let me correct you. He played junior hockey here in Sweden before he signed with the Sudbury Wolves. And then with COVID, Sudbury was kind enough to let his contract slide. And let's be fair to Sudbury, because they did something amazing there and looked to what the player wanted, and he wanted to stay near home. What probably in juniors in Sweden, I saw him quite a few times, and he has a temper, and he's really worked with that. And I think I don't know if it was on the interview I did that I put up on the Price, or if that was off after the interview. But he said he's worked a lot with a psychologist or a sports psychologist to temper that temper, and in that regard, that shows maturity. That shows that you want to win. That shows that you want to progress. And I think, that was probably part of the reason for staying in South Sweden as well. When he came back, he's close to his mom, he's close to his family. It is kind of home in a way. I mean, it's a little bit like you prepare yourself, you're going near near your home country, but you're living abroad, so you learn all that. And I know I spoke with his coach, and let's clarify that, because Denmark has this in Scandinavia, they are the Bohemians. They are very, very loose, relaxed. Hygge is a thing, you just have to be comfortable, you have to be nice, and it's great. And that's what he's working on right now, trying to become more professional, really. And he has been, and this year has been really extraordinary. I think I ranked him in order to go back to Eyes on the Price. I think I had him in the 40s when it came to top 25 under 25, and right now he's going to be borderline top 25. So that's some climb, and there are some others in that range that we have raised this year as well, because obviously COVID made for a different situation to evaluate players last year. But Dichow, big, strong. He keeps himself forward. One thing, and I'm gonna have my expert on Dichow on the Ice on the Price podcast this week, because obviously we have to put some stuff out as well when there's no games. And he pointed out something very early in this year, and I watched it. And normally goalkeepers trying to get both legs up under them from under themselves and stand up tall that way. Dichow is so tall and he's built a strong core. So he's working a little bit with the side movement in order to get up faster that way and not fall backwards, which would be the other thing that could happen because his center of gravity is a little bit higher up. He's well-spoken, soft-spoken. I obviously texted him and asked him a little bit about Frölunda, and he laughed and said nothing is signed yet, because obviously you can't sign anything before 1st of May. So so we know, I mean, like, that's the way you get out of things. I haven't signed anything, that's the deal. But it seems very, very plausible. Obviously, he's going to the Olympics, and actually, I was the first one to crack that for Montreal fans to say that he was going to the Olympics. Nicolas Cloutier on TVA found another source. I think he actually went to the Danish coach and got the other source. But yeah, we spoke about it like a month ago, even before Christmas, I think. And the rebound control is probably the one thing that stands out right now. He needs to be able to put those pucks down into the corner and not straight out. He has that temper still, but he channels it into more of a winning mentality and on himself. I've also seen him live. I'm very impressed the way he runs his defense. Like, he's very vocal. He points with his glove to show where the defender should go and where the attacker is coming. He has a quite good hockey IQ from my understanding, and it's difficult to rate that with goalies, but that's the way I see it right now.
It sounds, and correct me if I'm maybe making the wrong comparison here. Watching a lot of soccer for the North American listeners here, he seems to marshal the defense a little bit, kind of like a goalkeeper would in soccer, in that he's directing it from the net out. And he's 6'5". The Gnome is the funniest nickname going amongst Habs prospects because he's gigantic. Like, Carey Price is tall, and Dichow is 2 inches taller than he is, and he's just 20 years old.
I mean, like, it hails from the fact that his middle name is actually Nissen, which just translates to the Gnome. And obviously I went with it because of Robin Hood. Little John in Robin Hood. He's a big bastard of a man, and and I went like, this is having lived in England for almost 10 years. I was like, let's do it the English way. They will do the opposite, and I'm gonna go with that, and I love it. Like, he has 2 gnomes on the helmet as well, and I can't wait to see if he gets a special Olympic helmet with gnomes on it. That would be awesome.
He is the youngest guy on the Danish hockey team by 3 years, and he's the youngest goaltender. That's a huge feather in his cap. There is that he's 20 years old. He's going to the Olympics. I know that there's not NHLers going and this and that, but
he would probably have gone even with NHLers because there's only one goalie to compete with.
That's a huge thing for him, I feel like. And that's someone that I think he's now, after you talked to TVA and that what you put out for Eyes on the Prize, a lot more people are now paying attention to what he's doing. And I think that speaks to, the quality of work he's done. I know that obviously there's still wrinkles to his game, but seeing where he's come from and to where he's at now, from, like you said, we were ranking him in the bottom third of the top 2,525 to,
I would probably say the bottom 10%. I think most of us were like,
who the hell is this guy? Well, guess what? He's an Olympic goalie now. He's potentially going to a European powerhouse. Something's going right here. And I think a lot of people are going to be really excited to see what his next steps are. Like, he turns 21 in March. Like, so much growth.
He was also, I mean, I've heard this from the equipment manager at Malmö when he came over for the under-20s. He had all used gear. So because he comes from I shouldn't say poor family, but it's not as well off maybe as many other hockey families are. So they got him new gear all the way around. So you have to cheer for him for being the underdog all the way through as well. Like, going to your professional career starter in Sweden and with a decent under-20 team and not having new gear. I mean, like, that's fantastic. And they obviously sorted out in minutes, but and you could tell that from when I've seen him. He spent some extra time with the kids after the game. He's like he spends time with the fans, but also outside the locker room, he stands and talks with the kids a little bit extra, and that's the kind of person he is.
That's something you always love to see. And we have plenty more coming with Patrik in just one moment. But first, you may have heard this before, but we're reminding you that RockAuto.com is the only place that you should go to get your car parts and accessories. They deliver directly to your door, but the most important thing about them is that not only do they have the greatest selection of all kinds of car parts and accessories that you could possibly ever need, but also you pay the same as a professional mechanic would. So you wouldn't get that markup. Sometimes you could be paying up to twice as much as a professional mechanic just because you're a regular person. If you go into a store, you might be limited to their stock or the brands that they work with and their prices. But with Rock Auto, you will always get the lowest price. You'll get the greatest selection, and they have all kinds of makes and models. Whether you drive a classic or you just bought a new car, no matter what, you'll be able to find what you need for your car on rockauto.com. So go to rockauto.com and don't forget to put Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they'll know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, rockauto.com. Thanks as always for making us your first listen of the day, or potentially your first watch of the day now that we are on YouTube. And we are here with our guest, Patrik Bexell, who you can find on Twitter at Zeb_Habs. You can also find his work mainly at Habs Eyes on the Prize, but also pretty much everywhere. He is a European prospect and hockey expert, and he's very much dialed in, as you can tell from this episode, as to what's going on with the Habs prospects over in Europe. And we also have an episode coming with Patrik tomorrow where we are going to nerd out on the Olympic rosters, and we're super excited about that. But in the meantime, Scott, you and Patrik had kind of a plan for this episode and some thoughts that you wanted to share, so I'm going to let you take it away.
It's funny because I am looking through elite prospects. I'm looking through the in the system people, and my original plan was to talk about Oliver Kapanen, someone who made the Finnish World Juniors team. Obviously, that tournament never happened due to forces outside of their control. And then as I'm scrolling through here, there was a name that I had forgotten it existed entirely, Alexander Gordin, someone who we know can shoot a puck. We don't know what else they can do. And I'm looking at his numbers. He's got 14 KHL games this year and 1 goal. And I'm going, what's up here? He plays for
Sochi.
It's just hockey, huh?
Yeah, no, it's he scored in his first game with Sochi after being traded from the SCA system. And I think in some ways, and I'm fortunate, I think it was a great, in the 6th, 7th round when he was taken, it's worth taking that kind of risk on a player. You go for the home run. Obviously, it hasn't paid out, and the fact that he was traded away for next to nothing in the SCA system, from the SCA system to Sochi, that doesn't have a good system at all, from what I hear out of Russia, speaks a little bit to the game, to the kind of prospect that he is, and. Let's be honest here, Scott. Some of those games of those 14 is like a minute and a half on the ice. So he's too good for the MHL. He probably should be in the VHL, which is the next level, but he's not good enough for the KHL to play regularly. Not even on one of the teams that struggle with COVID protocols and stuff like that.
It's like you said, is that it's a worthwhile risk to take that late in the draft. It's what's the harm is you go for home run swings there. And like we've seen the highlights. I've watched him play a couple of games and I've seen some of the highlights and stuff that you've clipped. Dude can shoot the puck. It's just, if you can't do anything else, especially in the European sized rinks where they're bigger and there's more space and you have to be more active in your efforts. Yeah, you're only going to get so far.
He struggles with the skating, and let's leave it at that. And on a bigger rink, I think it's even worse. It becomes more obvious. But yeah, it's a player that I think was worth taking a shot on. And obviously, I like Russian hockey, so it's always good for me to catch some more of those games. But you mentioned Oliver Kapanen, and he's had a tough year in Kalpa. And you have to start wondering what goes on with Kalpa and Habs prospect, obviously, in the in the way of Johnny Ikonen as well. But there has been start and stops of the season in Liga, and Kapanen hasn't really played that much. He has succeeded in what was his goal when I spoke with him earlier, or end of last year, that he made the under-20 team. And I think he actually did an all right World Juniors. I think I rated him as a C on those games that I watched. And he played on the second line, which was really the third line, but it opened up the third line for someone named Brad Lampert. You know, every Canadian thinks he's going to go number 2 in the draft because he's half Canadian. If he was full Canadian, he would go number 1, obviously. But no, and I think, you know, he the Finnish coaches use that very, very smartly in order to have a defensive hold, responsible second line to exploit the other team's third lines. And it benefited in those few games that Finland got to play.
Yeah, and I think that a big thing for Habs fans here is that he was the one I was looking forward to watching the most out of all of this. I know that Caden Cooley was playing for Canada, but Jan Mysak and Oliver Kapanen were players that I was excited to see at this level because this is where they should thrive, and that kind of got cut away from us, and it's unfortunate. Obviously, Mysak is thriving in the OHL right now.
Hat trick last night.
Yeah, he did. He had a hat trick last night. As all of us were watching the Oilers pump the Habs for 7 goals, I was watching prospects play, and my night was much, much better. Before we go, there is one more prospect I wanted to ask you about, and it's actually not Jacob Olofsson, which is unfortunate because he had so much promise when he was drafted originally. It's one of the ones that I kind of had forgotten about, but it is, where are they on here? It's Dmitri Kostenko, who's playing in the VHL, which you said is the step below the KHL, correct? And he's got, for a defenseman, he's got 11 points in 32 games. And then in the MHL, he's got 8 points in 6 games. I know it's, you know, with the KHL doing stop and start because of COVID and everything else happening, what kind of progress have we seen from him, or what can we know about him? Because he was picked last year and most people went, I have no idea what to make of this defenseman right now.
He's big. he can skate marginally better than Gordin.
But no,
he can skate better than that. But he is big. He has kind of a decent eye when it comes to, and the fact is he started in the AHL, and the last couple of weeks he played in the MHL. So they sent him down, and the Russian coach for the under-20s, because he was part of the Four Nations in Ängelholm when I was there, he mentioned that he needs to think faster. He has the vision, he has the thinking. He just needs to gear it up a little bit on when it comes to thinking on the ice, and that's probably why he hasn't played in VHL again, because he scored quite a bit and he was very good defensively. But on the other hand, the level is kind of up and down. In MHL, it's the same way. He is good though, because he gets to there are, what is it, SKA, Seska to a degree, and Lokomotiv that has the big 3 like clubs in MHL, and they are the ones that, you know, those games are the ones you should really look at. Otherwise, they're 2 unevens, and maybe 2 lines are good, but the 3rd and 4th line are not. So it doesn't give you that much of visibility to or something to draw conclusions from. I think that finishing off with Jacob, it's as you say, it's sad to see. You know, he had a big shoulder injuries. He had a concussion, or it wasn't mentioned as a concussion, but it definitely looked like one in SHL. I can see him continuing play at Hockey Allsvenskan level. I don't really see him staying at SHL level. And we said that before the season. Tim Roy is doing all right, and he's not part of that team anymore. He's gone to one of the top 6 teams in Hockey Allsvenskan, and actually scored against Dichow the other game.
It's tough to see because, like, there's a lot of promise there. Like, I'm looking at some of his numbers. They're not mind-blowing, but taking into account he's playing in a men's professional league, not a junior league like some of the North American prospects would be, there was hope in everything going on there. And then, like I said, injuries and start and stop. Like his season with Timrå last year, 20 points in 36 games isn't awful. He would have been.
But that
20.
was at that time Timrå was in Hockeyallsvenskan.
Yeah, and you were hoping to see that next step, and then it never happened. And it's not like the Habs made a bad pick at the time. He was selected to go in that time frame. It's just it's like Ikonen. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and that's how drafting is, unfortunately. Sometimes you hit and you get, someone like Sean Farrell in the later rounds, and sometimes the guy in the second round that looks like a slam dunk is unfortunately a bit of a swing and a miss. So
sometimes you pick that goalie in the 7th round, it turns out to be Henrik Lundqvist.
Sometimes they never play in a game in the end. They never play a game in North America. So that's the fun part of it. Fun part of it all, right?
Yeah. And we never know. I mean, like, let's look at it from our perspective. We didn't know about Dichow, the season he was going to have. So, let's remember the ones that surprises us in a good way rather than the ones that surprise us in a bad way.
Agreed. And on that note, thank you so much, Patrik, for your insight. And we are not actually finished. We will have a second part of this episode with Patrik tomorrow, where we're going to discuss the Olympic rosters and what we can look forward to and what we're not super excited about and all of that. If you'd like to find Patrik on the internet, you can find him on Twitter at Zeb_Habs. You can also find his work at Habs Eyes on the Prize, among other places. You can find us on Twitter at LO_Canadiens. Please keep emailing us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. As you know, as listener requests, we made it happen finally. So we love when people email us and ask us, can you talk about this, or can you bring this person on? In the meantime, you will find Scott on Twitter at Scott Matla. You'll find me at The Active Stick. Thank you so much for listening. And if you liked this podcast, please check out Locked On Bets, where they have been absolutely killing it lately. Make that your second listen of the day. You will not regret it.